Today, let's talk about a company that feels completely invincible. Apple. I mean, it's a global titan, right? Selling iPhones, Macs, and this huge ecosystem of services. But when you actually peel back the curtain and look at their financial statements, the picture is, well, it's surprisingly risky. And that brings us to the big paradox we're going to unpack. It's like their balance sheet is screaming danger, while their bank account is just overflowing with cash. How on earth is that possible? The numbers seem to be telling two completely different stories. Okay, let's break this down. On one side, you've got these classic financial warning signs. It looks like they owe more money in the short term than they actually have on hand, and that the company's funded way more by debt than its own capital. But then, on the other side, you have the reality, a machine that literally prints cash with incredible profitability and speed. This is the core conflict we're going to unravel. And here's the spoiler. The answer isn't that Apple is just surviving on debt. The real story is about how it has engineered one of the most powerful, cash-generating engines the world has ever seen. This is a story of operational power, not financial weakness. So here's our roadmap for solving this puzzle. First, we're going to tackle that scary-looking liquidity problem. Then we'll dig into why its mountain of debt is actually a strategic choice. After that, we'll uncover the profitability secrets that make it all possible, and then reveal the secret weapon of efficiency that powers the whole machine. And finally, we'll look at the very real risks that come with this kind of model. First up, liquidity. This is where we see the most immediate red flags on the balance sheet. So let's jump right into the numbers. Let's just look at the 2024 numbers. Apple has about $153 billion in assets it can turn into cash pretty quickly. But its short-term debts, all the bills it has to pay within a year, are over $176 billion. That's a $23 billion shortfall. On paper, it looks like they can't pay their upcoming bills. And these numbers translate into some pretty alarming financial ratios. Apple has what's called negative working capital of over $23 billion, and its current ratio is just 0.87. Now, for almost any other company, this would set off major alarm bells. It basically means for every dollar of debt they owe in the next year, they only have 87 cents ready to pay for it. But here's the solution to the first part of our paradox. In 2024, Apple's core business didn't just make a profit. It generated a colossal $118 billion in pure, cold, hard cash from its operations. See, when you have that much cash pouring in every single day, you just don't need a huge savings account sitting on your balance sheet. The cash flow is the liquidity. And this is exactly how they do it. It's pure genius. Apple has absolutely mastered the cash cycle. It gets parts on credit from its global suppliers, assembles them with incredible speed and low-cost facilities, sells the final product, and collects the cash from you, the customer, often instantly. And only then, much, much later, does it finally pay its suppliers. It's basically using its massive supply chain as a short-term, interest-free bank. So that takes care of the short-term cash. But what about the long-term? The next piece of the puzzle is solvency. And this is where the debt numbers look truly staggering. Looking at the 2024 figures again, their total liabilities stand at over $308 billion. Now, compare that to the shareholders' equity, the company's actual net worth, which is just under $57 billion. That scale is just heavily, heavily tilted towards debt. This all results in a debt-to-equity ratio of 5.41. That means for every $1 of its own capital, Apple has $5.41 of liabilities. In a vacuum, this ratio screams high risk. But for Apple, it's not a sign of distress at all. So why is the equity so low? Well, it's a direct result of a very deliberate strategy. In 2024 alone, Apple spent nearly $95 billion buying back its own stock, and another $15 billion on dividends. It is actively and aggressively returning massive amounts of capital to its shareholders, which intentionally shrinks its equity base. This high ratio isn't a sign of trouble. It's completely by design. Of course, this entire Highwire Act is only possible because of one thing: immense, consistent profitability. This is the financial safety net that supports the entire structure. In 2024, Apple's net profit margin was nearly 24%. Just think about that for a second. For every single dollar of product or service they sold, they kept almost a quarter of it as pure profit. That's an absolutely incredible margin for a company of this scale. And it's the fuel for the share buybacks, the dividends, and the confidence to operate with such a lean balance sheet. And what's driving that profitability?
It's the strategic shift to services. I mean, while their products have healthy margins, the services division, think App Store, iCloud, Apple Music, is an absolute goldmine, with a gross margin of nearly 74%. This high-margin, recurring revenue is really the cornerstone of Apple's financial strength.
Okay, finally, let's talk about the secret weapon that ties all of this together: ruthless efficiency. This is what makes that cash engine turn so incredibly fast. Get a load of this number: 12 days. On average, that's how long it takes Apple to sell its entire global stock of inventory. These products simply do not sit on shelves. They are manufactured, shipped, and sold with just breathtaking speed. And once a sale is made, it takes them on average only 29 days to collect the cash. So when you combine that lightning-fast inventory turnover with quick cash collection, you get a system that converts products into cash at a truly elite level. This is the engine that drives everything we've been talking about. So, the system is brilliant, but it's not without risk. This isn't some kind of perpetual motion machine. It relies on a number of critical factors all working perfectly all the time. And this finely tuned machine depends on a few critical things staying in perfect balance. The cash from sales has to keep flowing. Innovation, like the new Apple Intelligence, has to keep people buying. The complex global supply chain, which is the source of its low production costs, has to remain stable. And all of this has to happen while navigating increasing regulatory pressure from governments worldwide. If any one of these Jenga blocks gets pulled, the whole tower could become unstable. Ultimately, when you really analyze Apple, you realize you're not looking at a company trying to survive its debt. What you are looking at is a company whose power comes directly from its ability to generate and manage cash with unparalleled skill. And that leaves us with a final question. Apple's financial model is an absolute masterpiece of strategic efficiency. But in a world that's anything but predictable, is a system that relies so heavily on everything going right just a little too perfect to last?